What's up, Browns fans? Spencer German, Anthony Moeglin with you here with another conversation about your Cleveland Browns. Our first time. Well, we had some conversations post-draft, but this is the first time we've all had a chance to catch our breath days later and talk about what happened and unfolded after the NFL draft. And there's plenty of topics to get into, especially surrounding the Browns' new quarterback. You know, it's kind of funny because the Browns took a quarterback in the third round that nobody seems to care about. And the guy they took in the fifth round is going to have all the headlines. So here we are perpetuating that even further. Anthony, excited to be alongside with you, man. And we certainly are going to have a lot of content. There's going to be no shortage of content here, at least in the coming months until we find out who wins the quarterback job. And I guess there's always a chance that they maybe move on from Shedeur Sanders, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen.
Dude, no shortage of interest in the Cleveland Browns. You know, yesterday, Shedeur was kind of like, or the last 2 days since he's been in Cleveland, he's been kind of like everywhere. He went to Browns Fit to work out, and which was hilarious for everyone who lives in Cleveland, who knew it wasn't the facility, knew that it was Browns Fit, and then went and got a workout outside, and everyone freaked out that he was running on a hill, which was just fine. And then yesterday he went and spoke at John Marshall High School, which I thought was really cool. Just trying to ingrain himself into the city, into the community. I think that was a really solid move by him. But yeah, I mean, he's been a Cleveland Brown for 2 days, and it is all anybody can talk about.
Do we have a backstory as to why he was working out at Browns Fit, by the way? Like, doesn't he have an entire, like the Browns literally just remade their entire weight room. He's not allowed to work out there?
Yeah, I think I don't. This is not. Don't quote me on it. My buddies and I were trying to get to the bottom of it. I think that the rookies weren't allowed to work out until rookie minicamp starts.
So
the Browns rookie minicamp starts next week. We're going to see a lot of clips from other teams, but for the Browns, it starts next week. So there's a reason behind it that he was not at the actual facility.
Well, I didn't know if that was true or not. So I guess you learn something new every day. But yeah. I just thought that was interesting. I was like, the man can't show up and work out at the facility where the team has a really state-of-the-art weight room. Like, he's got to go to Browns Fit. But I'm sure it made for some great public appearances for people that saw him there in person for the first time since he arrived in Cleveland. But speaking of Shedeur Sanders, there was obviously so much said about his pre-draft process. I think in the days since the draft, we've learned even more about sort of what went wrong, why he fell, all those different things. And listen, my understanding is that meetings didn't go well. And I think it's important to keep in mind as we analyze these guys during the pre-draft process, you know, you or me or the guys who do this for a living, like, or do like the draft stuff for a living, you know, your Daniel Jeremiah's, your Mel Kipers, etc. They give you sort of what they see on tape, and they have a good analysis of like, this is what the value the guy should have. But they're also not in those meetings with the teams. Like, they're not sitting, and even if they get some of the information about how the meetings go, they don't generally assume it's going to impact somebody's stock so massively as it did for Shedeur. But yeah, like, you can still, it's not that you can't trust those guys. It's just like the teams always have extra pieces of information that we don't, which is what those meetings were like. Apparently he butted heads with Brian Dable in one meeting that he had with the Giants. So you just never know how those things are going to go. And clearly, like, this is an extreme example of it, but that seems to be the thing that really sort of tanked his stock. The fact that, like, he didn't throw at his pro day, or sorry, he threw at his pro day. He didn't throw at the combine. He was treating it as if he was a lock to go in the top 10, top 5, whatever. And that clearly wasn't the case. And I think people wanted to see him go about it differently. Now, he says he has no regrets. But what I do think is interesting, as so much was said about Shedeur and who he is, and there was so much judgment or, you know, finite opinions formed about who he is. I think that these, you know, even the things you bring up, like just making a guest appearance at a local school, you know, whatever it is. But I think that some of the things that transpired during his draft experience have actually helped him, and maybe most notably the prank call, because his response to the prank call on his conference call the other day was basically like, yeah, you know, it was childish, but we all do childish things. Like, my brother does stupid videos on YouTube too. Like, he really brushed it off. I thought he handled that well. And I also think, like, that whole incident sort of garnered him a lot of sympathy from people around the league who were like, nobody deserves that, no matter how we feel about the kid. And so I think he's shown a lot of maturity already just in the handling of that. that I think speaks more so to his character than maybe some of these meetings did. And so, again, I'm not saying this is the end all be all. Like, I'm not saying this is like, okay, now Shedeur's redeemed himself and everything's fine. But I do think like he's off to a good start in terms of trying to repair the image that was tarnished throughout the pre-draft process.
Well, it's funny because the perception of him, and I don't know where it comes from, right? Because he's never carried himself other than like good. Like it's actually a very funny thing. Like, yeah, he's got that confidence to him. He probably toes the line of cockiness, and in some occasions probably goes over that line. But like we talked about it on a prior show, like Baker was like 100 times worse than Shedeur was when Baker was at Oklahoma. Like Baker was like, grabbing his junk and doing all sorts of other stuff and, just always talking smack. And like people loved it, thought he was fiery. Shedeur, on the other hand, like does the arm thing, kind of gets in your face, probably flaunts his money a little bit. But like other than that, he's like always been like solid character guy, like never had a big problem. But people think he's like this like terrible person. It's like, I'm not real sure where that part came from. Now the pre-draft stuff is interesting because like obviously the teams were in there. We weren't in there. None of these people were in there. But you hear Peter Schrager talk about, hey, maybe the meeting with the Giants wasn't as bad as everyone was saying. They just prefer Jackson Dart. And maybe these things aren't as bad as you're saying. So it's probably somewhere in the middle of like, Shedeur thought he was this star. His pre-draft stuff wasn't like the worst thing, but it probably wasn't great. And then the need behind it, I think that I even said it too on our night 2 show, was like, hey, you're drafting a backup now who is going to be the number 1 jersey sale. He's going to be the guy who, when he walks outside, it's all over Twitter and all over everything. Like, if you're comfortable drafting that as your backup, more power to you. But it's going to be a ton of attention, and there's going to be some pressure associated with that when the football gets snapped and actual plays start to happen, because you're going to want him on the field, and fans are going to want him on the field, and he may not be ready for it. So it's been an interesting dynamic to really peel it all back to see what actually happened behind those closed doors.
Yeah, we'll get more into the pressures that maybe come with it when we talk about the quarterback competition in general and who's the odd man out. But I think, and listen, I think it's fair to say that we probably evaluated Shedeur wrong in some capacity. Clearly, teams didn't think he was as good as some people did, on top of all the other stuff that gets thrown into the pot there that we just alluded to. I also think, like, I don't know that Deion, and this is no offense to Deion, because I know Deion's well respected, and Deion certainly, when he came out and came to the NFL, he could get away with carrying himself the way he did, because he was great. It was a Hall of Fame. It was a future Hall of Famer in the making. I think he tried to sort of instill that same mentality in his son, in Shedeur, and clearly he's not the same type of player. Like, he's his own person. He's different. So I don't know. Like, I don't want to say that they were misguided in the way they approached it, but I think Deion might have overplayed his hand to an extent.
Yeah.
And I think that probably didn't help the cause either, when they're like talking about like dictating where they're going to go and all these different things. Like, I don't think that was maybe the right way to go about it. So I think on multiple fronts, like, people were probably wrong in the way they evaluated him, maybe us included. We didn't have all the information, but also Deion, I think, seemed to, and listen, I don't blame him for it, because what would a good dad do? Like,
right,
promote his own kid to the best of his ability to try to improve his stock. But, I saw somebody talking about this, like, when he's sliding out of the first round, maybe somewhat expected. When he's sliding out of the third round now, that's where like an agent's getting on the phone and they're being like, hey, like, how can we resolve like what went wrong in the pre-draft process? Like, let's talk about this, whatever. Like, they're there to help you. It's not like Deion was doing that for him. Like, he wasn't calling teams and being like, hey, what's going on? Like, what did we do wrong? You know what I mean? Like, there's no making amends in that way. It was just kind of like, let's let the chips fall where they may. And so now he comes into the league with a giant chip on his shoulder, I think. Well, I would hope that's how he takes it. We'll talk about that here coming up.
Yeah, well, let's get to that in a minute. I took us off topic here because we want to talk about this prank call a little bit. I want to get your perspective. You're a father. Two things. What would you do if your son cost you $100,000?
Well, if I'm making millions like that, I guess that would be like if I lost $100 tomorrow. Like, I'd be pretty mad about it. So I'd be mad. But I mean, more so, I think it's just like the embarrassment of like my kid doing this. And I get Shedeur's stance on, hey, kids do stupid things. I was a kid once. We did prank calls. We, egged houses a couple times. Admittedly, sorry. I hope there's a statute of limitations on these things. I think. So yeah, like we've all.
TP. Did you guys TP? Were you a TP? Were you a
No,
TP?
I never did the TP thing. Honestly, that seems worse than eggs.
The TP was an all-timer.
Because like if it rains the next day, then you got TP
did.
everywhere. You never get it out of your tree or your yard. That seems awful.
Yeah, I never did it, but I had friends who did it, and they said it was a lot of fun.
I had somebody egg my house once, but there's a whole different. There's a whole story behind that we don't have time for. So, anyway, regardless, yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that there was fines because when the initial reporting came out, it was like the NFL is seeking no further punishment at this time. I was like, they're not going to get punished at all for this. Like, it seems pretty egregious that A, he left the iPad accessible, and B, that his son just thought it was a good idea. And I know it's, you can't like do something to the kid. Like, you're not going to like, in the grand scheme of things, it was just like a harmless prank. So it's not like nobody was really hurt in doing this. So it's not like he's going to like get, go to jail for this or something. But, at the same time, like I do think there deserved to be some sort of, hey, we take this very, very seriously. And I was glad to see that they dished out some fines in that way because, yeah, like that. Like I think at one point I mentioned like, can they take a draft pick away, like a 6th rounder or something like that from the Falcons?
Okay, so I get it because you have to set the precedent. But also, it's just a prank. Like it was a prank. It was a phone call. It was a $350,000 phone call.
Yeah, but the draft pick would be more so because somebody left this personal information accessible in that way. Like, what if it wasn't his son? What if it was like his son had a friend over and the friend grabbed the number and then like went home and like told, like who knows? Like that's like obviously it's sensitive information, and you're being trusted with it. So. Again, I think this is probably the right outcome, but man, like that had to be embarrassing for everybody involved. So,
no doubt, it's a crazy story,
but I do think, like I said, I do think it's actually helped him. I think he's garnered some sympathy from it. I also think he's handled it the right way, and so I do think their perspective on who he is has already changed to an extent because of it. So it's like making the best of a bad situation type thing for him, and I think that's worked in his favor at this point. So along those lines, as he enters the NFL, and I mentioned this chip on his shoulder, I would hope that falling as far as he did and being a 5th round pick sort of exposes him to this idea of, hey, I got to earn this. I'm not just going to be able to show up and like it's my job. And Andrew Berry talked about that. He said he's got to work. He's not going to earn anything automatically. Like nothing's going to be given to him. He's got to earn it. So I would hope that that's sort of instilled in him, and I think it is. Despite what's been said about him throughout this pre-draft process, I do believe that there's a person in there that wants to be great. I do believe there's somebody in there who thinks he has talent to be special at this level. Like when he talked to the combine about the idea that everywhere he's been, he's turned it around. Like that's a guy who has the confidence to come into any situation and feel like they can be the guy. So I do believe that about Shedeur. I do think like the number one thing he has to come in and be ready for though is like to just be coachable, be a sponge, be willing to learn from other people. Again, I'm not trying to say that's not him. I've been saying all along, I think that is who he can be. But I understand where there's like this stigma that he's not that because, again, of his situation. He's only played for his dad. Like he's never had another coach. This was sort of brought up by Mike Florio, I think, where Mike Florio talked about like, is it too late for him to pull his name out of the hat and go back to college and go transfer somewhere else and go play for another coach to prove that like I can do it here too. And obviously it was like a column. It was like an opinion piece. But again, like I think coming to Cleveland and having this coaching staff that wants to work with him and is going to have the way that they do things. And is he going to be willing to accept those things? That's what he had. Because it sounds like in these meetings, a lot of the problem was he was like, well, this is how I do things. And it's like, well, not at the NFL level. Like, we got to work together on this. Like, we want to use your skill set, but like, here's our plans. And so I think he's going to be willing to do that. But I hope that like being the 5th round pick, like just adds some fuel to the fire there and exposes him more to being willing to accept criticism at times and learn. Because I think if he does do that, listen, the talent's there. I think he still has a chance, even if he was more of a day 2 talent anyway, to be a solid NFL player. Like even if his ceiling is like number 10 in the league, like the 10th best quarterback in the league. That's pretty
Pretty
damn
good.
good, all things considered. And I think his floor is higher than other players in this draft. So if he's somewhere in the realm of like 10 to 20, I think you can win games that way. I'm not saying he's going to be your franchise quarterback, but I think you can have a pretty solid, career and team with him at quarterback if he falls in that sort of tier of guys.
Yeah, no, I think there's two things that are going for him, and it's really interesting, right? Like I think it was part of my take. The guys on part of my take said this, but like typically when a guy is a coach's son, it's always this positive. It's like, oh, he's been around football, he's been this. For Shedeur, it's like a super negative because like that's all he's played for. He's only been coached by one voice. So I think it'll be interesting. I think that the real positive in that is that Dion knows. I think Dion's smart enough to know, like, hey, when I came into the league, I was everything. I was the man. Everyone had their eyes on me. I think he is smart enough to know that that's not the case with Shedeur. Yes, all eyes are on him, but he's not the best player ever. And he's got to work. And, I think that he's going to have a really good maturity about him. He even said it like, first thing I have to do is win over the veterans by showing that I can work hard. Like, yeah, that's exactly right. Like, yes, that's the first step you got to do. And that's something he can learn, kind of from his pop, who's been around a boatload of rookies, I assume, and some probably worked hard and some didn't. And I think that is really good perspective for him to have. And then like, I honestly think that like the pressure to perform is like actually like off of him. Like a 5th round pick, you're a 5th rounder. Like you don't have to come in and have the fate of the Cleveland franchise on your back. If it turns out that you're that good, what a win. Awesome for everybody. If it turns out that, it's not for you and maybe you don't have it, it's not the end of the world and you're going to get another opportunity kind of somewhere else. So I think that those two are positive, but like the bottom line is like, just come in with your nose down. And when you're inside that building, work your freaking tail off and prove to your team that, hey, while I'm Shedeur Sanders, I'm here to work hard and be a member of this team.
I can't express enough. Like I understand, like I'm a member of the media, so I try to stay above the fray on, cheering for certain things or cheering for players or whatever. Like I just try to keep it down the middle as much as possible. But I am so like I'm rooting for Shedeur. I admit it. Like admittedly, I'm just gonna say here, like I am rooting for him to succeed. I think some of it is how the pre-draft process went. How I think he was misrepresented in some respects. Some of that probably was his own doing, and so he's got to kind of live with that. But like, I'm telling you, man, like I watched this kid play football, and I'm like, I see a guy that wants to be great,
Yeah,
and I get that sense from him that that's what he wants to do. Like he wants to come into the league and show what he's capable of. And I do think he's going to be willing to learn. Like just because he played for his dad during his whole college tenure doesn't mean that he's not, he's not accepting of coaching or accepting of other ways of doing things. Like he's never really been given that chance. And so again, that's another sort of stigma he's going to have to sort of shake here, but I want to see him succeed. And do it. I mean, doing it here in Cleveland would be awesome. Like if he becomes even if he doesn't become a franchise quarterback, but he becomes like a solid quarterback for them. If he's like what Baker Mayfield was, then people are gonna love him. Like they will eat that up. And so, man, like I hope he pretty quickly here like stays. If he just comes in and keeps his head down, works hard like he's talked about doing already, I think he will start to win people over pretty quickly. Like if he's saying all the right things. In his Shedeur Sanders way, where it might come off a little bit brash, I think it starts with like changing the opinions of people, but it's that's the first step, and then if he can do that, and then it leads to during training camp, we're having like a legitimate conversation about him maybe taking the starting job or earning the starting job. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for, man. Like this would be a cool story for Cleveland. It'd be a cool story for Shedeur, but I don't want to say it's like I feel bad for him, but I just think. There's a misunderstanding of who this guy is, and I think the things he brings to the table, the intangibles and like the personality that people seem to knock, I think it's a good thing, and I think it's why he has a chance to succeed at the next level and here in Cleveland.
And Spence, like the truth of the matter too is, all right, let's fast forward 3 years, and he's your starting quarterback, and things are great, and you're winning football games, maybe you go to the playoffs or whatnot. Like he's got that it factor to him where it's like cool to be a Cleveland Brown. It's got that like Odell feel to it too, where it was like when he came and it was like, hey, eyes are on us. Everybody's watching. You got, LeBron James tweeting at
I mean,
him.
it's
You
telling
got,
when his jersey is already the highest sold jersey for
like,
rookie
yeah,
players.
like it's such a small thing, but like at the end of the day, like all Browns fans want is like it to be cool to be a Brown, like, to be cool to be a Cleveland Brown, and like if he's good, guess what? It's going to be freaking sweet to be a Cleveland Brown, and I think that part, while small, in the grand scheme of things, I think could be important, especially in the eyes of the fans.
One along those lines, like if this is going to be a bad season, if they're only going to win like 5 or 6 games or whatever it's going to be, at least with Shedeur, you're going to have a story to follow a year, and you're going to have something worth tuning in for. Again, that's assuming he makes this roster, which we are going to talk about here next. But yeah, man, like it gives this season at least some meaning. It feels like in that regard.
We joked before we started, like I probably was a little too excited, but like the preseason in Cleveland is going to be like must watch football. Like there's going to be 60,000.
Yeah, Meg's asked that they're going to sell out every game.
You're going to be shocked.
I mean, maybe I don't know.
And the game he gets to start is going to be Muni Lot full, 60,000 in Brown Stadium.
Listen, if they sell out, that'd be awesome. I hope they pull it off. I just don't know if I'm buying that they're going to sell out the stadium for preseason football, because preseason football is kind of crap these days. But regardless, plus they're doing two sessions of joint practices. So, well, that's actually perfect though, because that's how you get Shedeur on the field. Quite honestly, like if they're doing joint practices and it's like Joe Flacco's taking most of the reps, then you'll see Shedeur in the game, which is what people actually want. So along those lines, I brought up Joe Flacco's name. We know the 4 quarterbacks in the room. It's Shedeur, it's Joe Flacco, it's Dillon Gabriel, who's going to be the forgotten man in this entire class, because nobody's going to – like if you put 2 podiums up for quarterbacks to speak and it was like, all right, we got Dillon and we got Shedeur speaking today, it's going to be everybody at Shedeur, maybe like 2 people at Dillon Gabriel. That's what it's going to be. He's going to just go under the radar this entire time, which maybe is going to be good for him. Maybe that was the plan all along. Like, hey, take the pressure off of Dillon Gabriel as a 3rd-round pick to try to perform by bringing in Shedeur Sanders to distract everybody. But there's so much that has to play out here. So I'm not telling us to like make any sweeping projections today on what the quarterback room is going to be, who's going to start, whatever. But let's face it, man. This team carrying 4 quarterbacks in the offseason, not abnormal. This team, when the season rolls around, is going to cut that number down to 3. And that's what these next several months are about, figuring out who is the starter, who are the 2 backups, and who's the odd man out that the Browns are not retaining. And I have some interesting thoughts on this, but I want to sort of see where your head's at first, because there's a couple different iterations of how this could all play out and who ends up starting and who ends up being cut or whatever. And this is why this is going to be the story that dominates. Probably on a national level, it's going to dominate, but obviously here in Cleveland, it's going to be all eyes on this quarterback group and who sort of emerges as the starter by the end of August.
Yeah, I think the odd man out for me feels like it's Kenny Pickett. I thought that the trade for him in general was like not forced, but they probably had to do it just in case you didn't know how the draft board was going to fall. But I have it for 3 reasons, right? For Joe Flacco, for a fan perspective, he's like looked upon awesome. Like if he runs out on the field and he's the starting quarterback in week 1, like everyone's going to be pumped and excited about it. And I think that can't go understated. Like all the players will be bought into it too. The other side of that is he is your veteran guy. This is a guy who's seen it all. He's done it all. Super Bowl winner, been at the lowest of the low, the highest of the high. What a perfect mentor to and not teacher, but mentor to the 2 young guys, to Dillon Gabriel and to Shedeur Sanders. I'd say for Dillon Gabriel, we didn't realize how much in love with him, how much in love the Browns were with him. This is a guy that they just speak glowingly about, even though he is a small quarterback, but he has something that Kevin Stefanski loves, and enough to take him in the 3rd round. You're not going to get rid of that. And then Shedeur is Shedeur, right? For all those reasons, it'd be a damn shame if you draft him and you get midway through camp and he's on the cut list. And the 4th reason, and I know I said 3, but I have 4, Kenny, you could trade Kenny you could flip him back for another pick. Like, I don't know that you're trading Shedeur for a pick. I don't know that you're trading Dylan Gabriel for a pick. I don't think you're trading Joe Flacco for a pick. I think you can turn Kenny Pickett into a fifth rounder and recoup some of that capital you gave up. So I think Kenny kind of finds himself as the odd man out in this room.
So I think that's a fair answer. I'm going to maybe surprise you a little bit here because I actually think the odd man out ultimately could end up being Joe Flacco, believe it or not. I just like here's the thing for me. I just think as I think about this room and how this could all play out, like I see three guys who are kind of similar, younger guys. Kenny Pickett's still under 30, and a guy who's trying to sort of revive his career. He could be the Sam Darnold of this group theoretically if they sort of get that right. And I also hear like Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry just talk so glowingly about Kenny Pickett since they've signed him. And I get it. Like, you're not going to bash a player that you just traded for. But at the same time, like it's been pretty noticeable how much confidence they're sort of exuding about Kenny Pickett. And so much so that there's a lot of people who are writing and saying they think Kenny Pickett has a legitimate shot to win this job. So it kind of comes down to, for me, like of those two, Flacco and Pickett, who wins the starting job out of camp? Because I'm assuming they're going to start the year with one of those guys as the starter and then like pivot to the rookie or rookies later. But I could see a world where Kenny Pickett wins it, especially because they gave up a 5th-round pick for him, right? Like, it's not like they got him for nothing. Joe Flacco is just money. And so I could see a world where Kenny Pickett wins the starting job. And then that sets the stage for them to potentially shop Joe Flacco. And that's the other thing that kind of comes to mind for me, because the last 2 years we've seen Andrew Berry at the end of training camp try to trade quarterbacks. He did it with Josh Dobbs in 2023, got a 5th-round pick out of it. He tried to do it last year. He floated Jameis Winston as somebody they were willing to trade. Nobody took the bait. They also were trying to trade Tyler Huntley in the meantime. Nobody took the bait on that. They ended up just having to cut Tyler Huntley because if you remember, on roster cutdown day, they kept 4 quarterbacks for the sole reason that they were trying to trade one of them, and nobody bit on it, and so that was kind of that. But along those lines, like I could see them doing the exact same thing this summer, where they get to the end of training camp, some team has an injury to a quarterback or whatever. Maybe they want a better backup option in case somebody gets hurt, and they're like, you know what? We need Joe Flacco. That's the guy. And he seems like the one that would probably garner you more on the trade market too. Now, it's hard because you got to sell to the team that you're still trying to be competitive. Like, hey, we need a veteran here to sort of do that. And Flacco is going to probably be the best option for that because, I mean, there's still players on this team that saw what he did in 2023, right? Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, chief among them. Yeah. But, yeah, man, like I wouldn't be surprised if this thing ends and we're all sort of stunned by this decision where they're like, let's try to trade Flacco and roll with the other 3. And and I guess like Shedeur's a 5th-round pick. So 5th-round picks are never guaranteed anything. Like those are guys that are like on the bubble fighting for roster spots. So in theory, there's a world where maybe they tried to they cut him and tried to sneak him to the practice squad. Given how the NFL showed you they feel about him in the draft, like maybe you could get away with that still. But if he has a good if he has a good training camp and like he looks pretty good, like that'll be harder when there's actually tangible video of him doing it against NFL players, more so than it probably has been during the pre-draft process. So it's an interesting setup. It's an interesting dynamic. I'm more inclined to think this team likes to keep players that they draft on the roster. And so I think they would probably try to keep both rookies. And so that's why, to me, it does come down to Flacco or Pickett, the 2 guys said. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if Flacco's the guy that they were to move on from.
Dude, the one thing that sticks out in my mind is like you talk about convincing the team. I think that's really important going into this year. And part of that is that they played a lot of football against Kenny Pickett. They know what he brings to the table. Like, they know that, maybe you can win a couple games with him, but he's not going to light the scoreboard up. He's not going to do any of that. Like, that would be the one thing to me.
Hey, he's got those 4th-quarter comebacks, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's also got the lone loss against Dorian Thompson-Robinson too. So it's like, there's like
DTR's claim to fame.
Yeah, that day. So I don't know. In my opinion, I think it's Kenny. I think we both though see it the same way. Like I feel like they're getting through this with both those rookies on the roster.
Yeah.
and then one of those two veteran guys.
I mean, unless Shedeur just looks awful, but
Well, and then he can't throw it at all.
then I guess he'd be the one you move on from. But I'm not anticipating that. I mean, it's funny, like if maybe Dylan Gabriel looks awful, but even if Dylan Gabriel looks awful, I don't think they would cut him. Like they used a 3rd round pick on him. You're not cutting a 3rd round pick. You're going to try to see that through to some level. Like they're not going to give him like a leash that a 1st round pick would get, but he's going to have a longer leash than others because he was a 3rd round pick. They used a top 100 pick on him, so of course they're going to give him some time. And Kevin Stefanski was out here like spewing happiness. I've never seen him so happy in my life, sitting up there talking about Dylan Gabriel and how much they liked him.
Dude, they also like we brought up DTR just a moment ago. Like he had a hell of a leash too. Like he was on this team for 3-4 years and like instilled the belief. I remember my buddies and I were texting about this. There's the clips of his preseason game last year against Seattle, and it was like he was ripping that thing across the field. He had one throw that I was like, we were all like, oh my gosh, he's better than Deshaun, and maybe it was. It probably was pretty close to him being better than.
I'm just so glad we're past the discourse of like, man, we got to get DTR out there and see what he can do. Like, guys, we know what he can do. We saw him in the season. It's not that serious. Like, he's not some savior. Like, let's just be real.
You know me well enough now, Spence, that this reaction won't surprise you. But the day that Deshaun didn't play against the Ravens and he got that surprise start, it was before I was working for On SI, so I was going to the game as a fan, and I remember getting the news in the parking lot and telling all my buddies, "We're winning this game. This guy's the truth. He's going to light it up. He's going to throw 3 touchdowns." And I think we had like 60 yards of total offense.
Yeah, it was bad. That was a rough day for everybody involved. So with that said, that's the quarterback situation, as you know. Browns also had some news this week in terms of the wide receiver situation because they signed a wide receiver, a controversial wide receiver at that. They also did something with Elijah Moore that I thought was interesting, which maybe I'll start there because Elijah Moore actually signed with the Buffalo Bills. I had talked for a couple weeks about maybe Elijah Moore coming back to Cleveland. That's obviously not happening now. He signed a 1-year deal with Buffalo. I think it was like a $4 million deal or something like that. And so he's going to the Bills. Now, what they did, though, was use a very rare thing in the form of the unrestricted free agent tender, which anybody who knows the restricted free agent market, with restricted free agents, you can place a tender on a guy that allows you to have like exclusive negotiating rights with them. And the level of tender that you place on them, you get a draft pick back from the team that were to potentially sign him if he signs somewhere else. You don't get a pick in this instance. So, no, the Browns will not be getting a pick from the Buffalo Bills. But by doing this, it's like a tender that would offer him, like I think it was like $3.2 million or something like that if he returned to Cleveland on a 1-year deal. But if he doesn't, it allows the Browns to use him as part of their compensatory pick next year, like the formula for it, because that only uses free agents that you lose between the start of the new league year and the Monday after the NFL draft. So by placing that on him before the end of the Monday after the NFL draft, it guarantees that, like, hey, we tried to extend this guy. He didn't want to stick around. And so they'll count that towards the compensatory pick formula for the Browns. I'm assuming they expect that by losing somebody like Elijah Moore, that will help them get a higher end compensatory pick next year, which is why they did it this way. So I wanted to just kind of clarify that real quick because there was some confusion there. I had never even seen it before, so I had to kind of clarify it. But that's how that works. And so Elijah Moore's going to Buffalo. He's not coming to Cleveland. And so with that in mind, the Browns ended up settling instead on Deontay Johnson, who has at this point made the rounds in the AFC North. The only team he hasn't played for at this point is the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm just going to come out and say it. I think this is one of the worst moves they could have made. But that's just
you texted me right away. I don't know. I think that it's I don't think it's a great move. I don't think he's on the team when the ball gets kicked off in September. Just a filler spot. I wanted to keep Elijah Moore. Obviously, that was never going to be in the cards.
I would prefer Elijah Moore over Deontay Johnson.
Oh, certainly. And Elijah,
especially with Flacco. Like, if Flacco is the starter, like, they were making sweet music together. Like it was
Right.
amazing.
Both in New York and in Cleveland. It was Elijah's rookie
Right.
year where Flacco was the quarterback for the Jets, and like it was great. And then in 2023, when Flacco came, first game he had 93 yards against the Rams, and he had that butt catch upside. Regardless, he signed a 1-year, $5 million deal to go to Buffalo. He wasn't coming to Cleveland. Cleveland could have certainly afforded that. He was not coming back to Cleveland. I don't know. Deontay Johnson, I don't think he's going to be on the – like, there's a guy who's proven that, he doesn't – football's not important to him. Like, he signs these deals and he's a head case. He never shows up and then gets cut. Like, it's not –
Well, so that's the thing that makes that softens the blow for me is the idea that he's probably not even going to be on this team by the time they cut the roster down. But in that vein, it's like, okay, then if that's what we're assuming, you still need a wide receiver then. Like, you still need to go sign some wide receivers. Because that still is a need for this team after they didn't address it in the draft. But Deontay Johnson, to your point, like all I've ever heard is that like he could be on a team that's in the playoffs and like playing for big things. And in the locker room after the game, he's like complaining about how he didn't get enough catches in the game. It's like he only cares about that one thing. There's no like he's a head case. Like you don't want him in your locker room,
dude.
And for this team especially, like why do they want a guy like that around these guys? That like this younger impressionable team that they're trying to build. Why do you want him in the locker room? So even if it's for a short period of time here, this is why I just think you want to talk like people are calling this a boneheaded draft by the Browns because they took 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs and whatever. No, the boneheaded move is signing somebody like Deontay Johnson to like poison the well.
Well, I would also say you peel the layer back one more level, and I think this speaks to what the Browns are going to be next year. Right, they didn't address the wide receiver position. They addressed the tight end position with Harold Fannin, who can be a kind of a big body receiver as well as an inline blocker. I think they go out and sign a tight end. I think you're going to be living, and there's going to be a tight end on the field every snap on offense, and there's going to be 2 tight ends on the field the majority of snaps on offense.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
It's going to be, especially with the quarterbacks you have, the offense you're going to run. You drafted 2 of the best running backs in the entire draft. You got those 2 guys. You're going to be majoring in the run game, and that's the truth of the matter. You're not going to be in situations where you have 4 receivers on the field. You never be with 4 receivers. You're going to be rarely with 3 receivers.
Well, that was as soon as this draft ended, and I was like, they didn't get a wide receiver. My head did my brain sort of did go to a place where I was like, they are running Kevin Stefanski's offense again. He loves 12 personnel. So yeah.
He's had four tight ends on the field at once.
Now, that's also contingent on them staying healthy. But yes, like I sort of was envisioning the same thing. That's going to be a lot of Harold Fannin and David Njoku out there with Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. And that'll kind of just be what it is.
That's where you're living right there. And talk about sweet music. That has the potential to be good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the sound of that. But it's also you'd rather have more receivers that you can rely on than, like Jamari Thrash being like the next man up in the room. That's just crazy to me. Regardless, that brings us to, I think, another interesting question with this team, with the draft now behind us and some positions now replenished with players that were taken. But what position group is the best on this team post-draft for the Cleveland Browns? I think there's an interesting conversation here because for example, running back completely overhauled. Do we think there's enough potential there to name it the best group on this team, though? I think is a different question.
So that was the intent when I made the board here. Like, how can I get the running backs into the conversation? And then you and I talked pre-show. That running back room has the potential to be good. It's totally unproven, right? It's Dylan Sampson, who's a rookie, and Quinshon Judkins, who's a rookie. And that 3rd spot, I think everyone in Cleveland, everyone who is a Browns fan, is hoping that 3rd spot's Nick Chubb. It might be Jerome Ford. It might be somebody else. Like we don't really know at this point. But I think it's totally unproven. So you can't, as much as I want to call that group one of the better on the team, it's got the most potential. I don't think it's quite there yet. The group that I point to is the defensive tackle group, the interior of the Browns.
Not even the outside guys. You're just looking interior.
I think this interior has the potential to be something. Obviously, Mason Graham, again, potential there. Mike Hall, if he can recover and get back from his knee injury, can be really good. This Jawan Briggs now, he came on late in the season last year. If you forget him, I encourage you to just Google him and go watch some of the actual tape. Defensive tackles aren't going to have good stats, But you watch the tape; he's a space eater. He's nasty. I think this interior group.
I'm excited for Malik Collins.
Malik
from
Collins,
the 49ers.
Yes. And this is a young position for the Browns, and I think it's got the potential to be a very good position for the Browns and something that you need, right? There's a clip that was going around Twitter the other day of like all the times Myles Garrett rushed around the edge, didn't get the sack because the quarterback stepped up into nothing. Like that, the goal here is for that to be eliminated, to press the pocket from the interior and let those dudes on the outside hunt. Let Myles hunt, Obo, Alex Wright, all those cats get around the edge and get quarterbacks who are just sitting ducks. And you can do that by having a strong interior defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this in some of our draft coverage, but Mason Graham gives you something that you haven't had, which is pressure from the interior of the defensive line, not just Myles Garrett and maybe Shedeur Smith. Like this is a new sort of uncharted territory. Yeah, I mean, I think you could expand that out to the defensive line as a whole. I think that probably is like you could say that group in general is probably the strongest. I like you. I don't know that I would call any group on the offensive side the strongest group. I mean, quarterback is a crapshoot at this point where you're just kind of we got to wait and see there. Wide receiver, we just dismantled it for being not very good at all, and now they added Deontay Johnson as like some last resort type thing. So like I don't know that I'm going there. I probably would have said the offensive line in previous seasons, but I think given how they've regressed a little bit the last couple of years, maybe that was coaching. We'll see how that sort of changes in the next season. But yeah, like I would probably have said offensive line in the past, but I'm not saying that now. So running back's the one that like stands out if I was going to do offense, but I think you're right. Like there's that's based off of potential. And I do love Quinshon Judkins. So
yeah,
I mean, I'm very enticed to actually pick that group because of Quinshon Judkins. But I'll stay on the defense though and say like the secondary could be in that conversation as well, just for the sake of having like a different answer on it than just like repeating the defensive line stuff. But like, I mean, you think about this Browns secondary just in general. Like there's some guys that are proven, like your Denzel Wards. You obviously got Greg Newsome back in the fold. He's not. I would assume at this point he's not being traded since he made it to the draft, and he's going to be back on his last year of his deal. Grant Delpit's pretty solid at safety. Now there's the hole at free safety where Juan Thornhill did play. And by the way, I was right on that I didn't necessarily think they were going to like go all out to address that in the draft. I think they were just going to kind of piece it together with who they got. And that feels like what they set the stage for. And on top of that, I think Martin Emerson Jr., as much as he had a down year, the team still feels highly about him. They sort of told you that by not drafting Travis Hunter, by the way. But like he had a really good year and then he had a down year. I'm guessing the truth is probably somewhere in the middle with him. And so if that's true, like I think you feel pretty good about that. Yeah, I mean, like, and I think somebody like Cameron Mitchell has a chance to get even better as a slot guy potentially for this team. So I don't know.
You've seen Spurs with Ronnie.
What'd you say?
Ronnie Hickman. We've seen Spurs with Ronnie Hickman, and
he's gonna probably get his shot to start this year. So, yeah, like I like that group as a whole. I think there's some. I think it's probably one of those. Defensive line probably does get the crown here overall, but I think the secondary has a case. And then maybe I would go running back group. I'm doing like a top three just because I feel really good about the potential of Quinshon Judkins and most of all.
Yeah, no, we agree on the offensive side of the ball. There's not much there. If there was, it'd be running back. But on defense, I think your defense is gonna be pretty good. I'm excited to see what Schlesinger brings to the table at the linebacker position. And I think all throughout the draft process, I was against beefing up the defense, and I wanted to get the foundation.
If JOK was healthy, man, linebacker would be a sneaky answer.
Yeah,
you'd have JOK, you'd have Schlesinger. You have Jordan Hicks. Like that's a pretty solid group. Devin Bush actually played pretty well last year in filling in for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Like that'd be a sneaky answer if he was healthy.
Yeah.
But we just
I don't think it'd be sneaky. I think it would be the answer if JOK was healthy. But you got to kind of fill that
defensive line.
You got to fill that in now without him. But yeah, there's not much. This defense is going to be really good. This offense, I think, is going to be an uphill battle. I think for the most of the year.
On the flip side of that, there is a case to be made that just with competent quarterback play, the offense could be even just average. And
Yeah.
like it almost feels like it was so bad last year that we forget that like, the year before it was like essentially the same team and they were
And you had a
fine.
good defense,
They
and
were
you were in the
fine.
playoffs. Yeah, and you were in the playoffs. You know?
So we'll see. But in the meantime, guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us to participate in this conversation. I can guarantee you there'll be plenty more to come with Shedeur Sanders coming into Cleveland and already making headlines as he makes his way around town at various stops. So be sure to keep on following along because we'll have plenty more content like this. We obviously had a ton of stuff for you over the weekend, including our post-round recaps, but also press conferences from Angie Berry and Kevin Stefanski, from some of the players that spoke over the weekend as well, including Shedeur Sanders, who we had his conference call up there. So be sure to check all that out. Also, head on over to si.com/NFL/Browns, where you can read any of our written content as well. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for watching. For Anthony Moeglin, I'm Spencer German. Keep on following along with all things Cleveland Browns, with the Cleveland Browns on SI.